Good evening. I would like to thank everyone for joining us today in our reunion weekend programming. Welcome to our alumni paint and sip program. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Professor Keith Mayerson, who will be sharing with us tonight as we paint and sip.
Hi, everybody. I don't know if I'm unmuted now. Nice to see everyone. I hope everybody's doing great. Hopefully this is a historic evening. We might have a new president by the time this is over. Who knows? I'm Professor Keith Mayerson. I'm the chair of painting, drawing, and printmaking here at USC Roski. And it's my deep honor to share the evening with you guys. Now, I don't know if you ordered materials for this evening and if you got those materials in time, but for tonight, it could really be anything. You could use any materials that you want. You don't have to have any talent, or you can have an abundance of talent, but hopefully we're gonna have some fun and a little meditative fun too tonight. So if you want, as we're getting our act together here and just getting started, get some materials. We had watercolor. You might need a glass of water. You might need your watercolor materials, but even if you have stuff from Staples, office supplies, pencils, charcoal, whatever you like. And of course it's paint and sip. Drugs are bad, art is good. Alcohol is a drug. I'm driving tonight, so I'm just going to have water and cold brew coffee, but please enjoy. And I think there's hopefully a lot to celebrate tonight. And hopefully tonight's going to be an edifying evening for us all. I love the meditation of making art. And tonight we're going to do that meditation a little bit. We're going to make something I call circle drawings or circle paintings that look a little bit like this. But I have a little slide program that I could show you in a demo too. So I'll get right to it. Hopefully we'll get started. I want to do my desktop. We'll get started in, it's funny, it's okay. We'll start painting in about 10 minutes or 5 minutes or so. But here I am. Professor Keith Mayerson. If you ever want to contact me, this is my email. You could also see my website at keithmayerson.com. I'm actually very proud to join a new gallery called Karma Gallery. It's a very young, vital gallery that shows mid-career artists, older artists. They just had an opening with the fantastic second-generation Abex artist last night, Louise Fishman. And we're just getting started at this gallery. I was with Marlborough Gallery. I've been exhibiting my art for about 25 years and teaching all the while. I've been here at USC for about 4.5 years and chair for a couple. So still getting used to things, but truly of all the places I taught, I was in New York for 25 years. I was teaching at NYU, Brown, Yale, and I also taught comics at SVA, the School of Visual Arts, for about 25 years as a head comics teacher. Here at USC, I get to do both under the same roof for the first time, which is awesome. Little inspiration for you. This is Kenneth Nolan, who was a second generation abstract expressionist artist, and kind of the Trojan colors here for his circle painting and half. So I need to progress the slide here. Here we go. So this is the circle painting that we're going to do today. And really this is sort of a foundation exercise that I do with my students for beginning drawing classes and beginning painting classes. And the whole idea is, in postmodernity, they said painting was dead. And of course, it's never died. We all love painting, and because of the politics of the art world and the politics of painting and the politics of patriarchy, oftentimes abstraction was sort of left by the wayside in the last 30 years or so. And also paintings weren't supposed to have a life of their own. They were supposed to be quoting things, parts of art history. This was necessary for the painting discourse and the political discourse surrounding our culture. But luckily we've come some ways, maybe even further tonight. Obviously there's still a lot of work to be done, but now art could be for everybody. And even if you're making abstract painting, maybe that's okay in this day and age when perhaps there's no words. I was inspired by this originally by one of my favorite artists of all time, Louise Bourgeois, who was a great surrealist, abstract artist and sculptor from the 30s. And she really fought for her rights to P-A-R-T-A-Y. She really wanted to be part of the art world and had to battle a lot as a woman and as her own idiosyncratic person to really become one of the leaders of the art world. When I was at NYU, I would take my seniors to her salons on Sunday for Easter usually. And it would be sort of a way to baptize them into the art world. I felt like if you were in Paris in the 50s, you would visit Giacometti and we would visit Louise Bourgeois, who sadly recently passed away, but I love her so much. She was so psychological, so conceptual, so smart, and all of her work is great. But she did have insomnia. And for a couple of years, she did these famous insomnia drawings. And I really like to teach the meditation of making art. That's one of the reasons I think any artist does it, from whether you're a little kid drawing dragons in your room till you're Louise Bourgeois' age, and making art for yourself because you love it, because you need to do it. And a little bit like the students know this, the Harry Potter pensieve, with every thought, you're sort of draining it out of your mind and putting it down on paper. Certainly this helped Louise when she was making her work. And, you know, the feminists would say, this is about feminism. And she would say, no, it's not. Or the psychoanalyst would say, oh, this is very psychological. And she would say, no, it's not. But everybody was right because nobody could be wrong. And Louise was a super smart person. But late at night, she would just draw these circles. Maybe one would represent like her son, Jean-Louis. Maybe another would be another son who would never visit her. But she would sort of drain her mind out in these drawings to put herself to sleep. And it's great stuff. She's very talented. If you don't know who she is, you'd really enjoy looking at her. Primarily sculptures is what she's known for, but she was a great renderer, fine artist, drawer, everything. I come from comics a little bit. I grew up in Colorado. My access to art was really through comics. The Denver Art Museum, where I grew up, was pretty good, and I appreciate it even more now. But my access to art, like so many of the kids even today, was through comics. And one of my ideas about these circle paintings comes from the idea from Scott McCloud. His great book in the bottom right-hand corner, Understanding Comics, talks about the power of the icon versus more subjective rendering. If things look too real in their representation, sometimes it's hard to identify with them because they're so other. Whereas if things are stripped down, like the smiley face, it could be anybody, because anybody could be a smiley face. We tend to see compositions as faces. So we see faces and everything. We don't know what we look like so much after we brush our teeth in the morning. We sort of get a fuzzy idea of what we look like. But we know what everybody else looks like as part of this phenomena. Also, we tend to animate inanimate objects. And so if you see the Have a Nice Day dude, the happy face invented by Harvey Ross Ball in the top left-hand corner, maybe it could be you because it's so essentialized, it's yellow, it could be any race, it could be any gender. This is something that I think the Buddhists have known for many, many thousands of years. The Buddhists actually had a specific formula in which to create their images of Buddha that were very symmetrical. And the idea is that you were supposed to suture into the icon of the Buddha when you're praying to a Thangka painting or meditating to one, go into the cosmology of the Buddhist world so you could be like Buddha and be one with that whole world. Fast forward in the future though, Ub Iwerks was the great Disney animator that created Mickey Mouse and a lot of the other characters. Again, a very iconic anthropomorphized animal. If you're an anthropomorphized animal, you could be anything, kind of like Bambi, who could be anybody, any creed, any race, any color. Charles Schultz, obviously one of the great cartoonists of the time, invented Charlie Brown and the Peanuts gang. He was actually a teacher at a Draw the Pirate School, if you remember those old ads from the comics. And he loved teaching. It was actually a legitimate online school or vocational school, as we we're understanding now. He came up with the design for Charlie Brown and the Peanuts because there was a little person who worked with them, and she was really jovial. Everybody really loved her. And because he has such small space to do his comic strips, he created these characters kind of like the little person that he was friends with big heads and little bodies. But you know, Charlie Brown could be almost anybody. Snoopy, an anthropomorphized dog, could be anyone. Osamu Tezuka was the godfather of all manga and anime. He's the guy who created Astro Boy after looking at Walt Disney's Bambi and watched it like 37 times to come up with his ideas of these iconic characters. They've really taken over the world. So many of our students are interested in manga, Japanese comics, or anime, Japanese animation, and comics and animation in general. In fact, I started a new visual narrative art minor with Roski, with an animation and gaming cinema study program, with theater arts and Dornsife English. And it's just started, it's just taking off. We're so excited. I always thought that teaching comics kept me from getting hit by lightning because fine art's such a rarefied world, whereas comics are for everyone. I've had students like Nate Powell won the National Book Award for his book March that I did with Congressman John Lewis, because John Lewis read a comic about civil rights when he was a kid with Martin and decided to join Martin Luther King in the movement. And as an adult, he decided to do the graphic novel trilogy with Nate. And now all the schools across the world are reading this, and it's really teaching people the important stuff. I believe in the ideas of Joseph Campbell and George Lucas. And you know, Joseph Campbell's idea of an artist was an artist's job was to tell stories for a culture to understand itself in order for it to progress. And hopefully, whether it's fine art for a more rarefied world that has a trickle down thing for the rest of the world, it's good. But comics, of course, reach everybody. I love the fine art world. I published a graphic novel or two in my time. I'm doing a graphic novel for Fantagraphics, but most of my career has been spent showing in galleries and museums. This was one of an early painting I did, thinking about that idea of suturing into the icon of a face. And I wanted these paintings to move. I always felt like paintings did have a life of their own, that there was sort of like a battery coil, an energy and a vitality to doing maybe these circle paintings that once you start looking for your face in the image, maybe it starts to vacillate and therefore vibrate and become really alive. In the early 90s, I was exhibiting these all through New York and elsewhere, and I still exhibit them in museum shows. I've been doing a series called My American Dream for the last, I guess, 4 presidents now, since W. Bush, about a more positive kind of world. And sometimes it's figurative and narrative, which I think we need for ideas of content. And sometimes, like the AbX artists who were working after World War II, and the bombing of Japan, there were no words. And so maybe they could get their emotions and feelings out by making abstract paintings. In the early 90s, I was doing these because I kind of felt this way, but also I wanted to be able to stare in front of these things and have them move back and forth. So just to give you an idea of what we're going to do today, I'm trying to find my color wheel here. And hopefully you guys have your artwork set up. I'm sort of filibustering right now to give you an idea of what we're going to do while you're getting set up. But this is the color wheel. Hopefully you guys might know this. The color wheel, very famous. If you got the materials for this class in time, it was actually a color wheel design palette. And with the color wheel, of course, you have the primary colors, yellow, blue, and red. No other colors can mix to make those colors. But if you mix yellow and red together, you get orange. If you mix red and blue together, you get purple. If you mix blue and yellow together, you get green. Those are the secondary colors. And tertiary colors are mixed by doing the colors that are contingent to those. And so you have the yellow-green, yellow-orange, red-orange, red-purple, blue-green. This is important because, as you guys probably know, colors mean everything. Kandinsky really liked the idea of synesthetic synesthesia, when you can look at something but feel it too. And colors have a big part to do with that. You might know that warm colors tend to come forward. Cool colors tend to go back. Warm colors could be really vital and intense. Cool colors could be sort of mellow, sometimes melancholic. If you want to do complementary colors, colors on the opposite sides of the color wheel, infamously red next to green, really creates a vibration. That could be really intense and vital. A joke I always tell the students is, why are elephants big, gray, and wrinkled? Because if they were small, smooth, and white, they'd be aspirin. Sorry, it's a stupid joke. It's the only joke I know. It's a dad joke. But why is it funny if it's funny? Because elephants and aspirins don't go together. And when you put them together, it creates content. And I think most postmodern art is about 2 or more ideas that you put together, kind of like humor, to come up with a thesis statement that you hopefully also bring up formally with 2 or more arguments. I like the idea of the golden ratio, 60 mixed with the rule of thirds, about 60, 40, 70, 30 arguments. And the more arguments you have in any image, the more interesting it is to look at and then hopefully think about. I think an artist's job is to create seductive images that lure, in a good way, people to look at your images for a long time. Hopefully they're thinking about it too. It's not much to think about with the circle painting. However, maybe if you're looking at them and they're sort of like an image where the batteries are inside and they're vacillating and moving back and forth, perhaps it doesn't make you think about things specifically in terms of content, but maybe it makes you feel something. Maybe it's about a certain kind of rumination. These images are really fun and easy to make. I don't know if you guys have your materials out and you're ready to go. Is everybody good and ready to go? I have a little movie I could show you to show you how to get started. So to make this drawing that I just showed you, it just took a half an hour. I unfortunately didn't get my materials from Blick in time, but all you need to do is, I usually tape my watercolor paper down. This is a good idea sometimes because if you tape it down, then it won't buckle when you put water on it. Sometimes it's good to do a little breathing exercise, a little meditation. The Dalai Lama always says if you want to meditate with a lot of thoughts in your mind, it's like trying to clean something with a dirty rag. And so I like to do my own like sort of breathing exercise and just kind of get into it. But then when you start, basically all you need to do is put down like one little dot of color. It could be anything. The motivation here, what you want to try to do is to make your image vacillate, make it push and pull, or as I like to tell the kids, make it go whoopee, whoopee, woo, where the image kind of goes woo, 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 whoopee, woo, woo, woo. If you have that in your mind's eye as an idea of what you want this image to do, and if you have the idea of the color wheel, and you could even have a picture of it nearby, if you want things to really vibrate, you could just merely use things on the opposite side of the color wheel to make this happen. But then, you know, think about each stroke being kind of like a thought. Again, the Harry Potter pensieve idea, where you're kind of draining your thought out onto the paper. You can think about anything. I was listening to George Harrison when I was doing this, which was very chillaxing with all the incredible weird politics that are happening right now. And it was really fun. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. I have a slideshow of circle paintings to give you inspiration. I also have examples of current student work that I could show you too while we're doing this. But I thought we could take about half an hour to make our circle drawing. Then maybe we could have like a little mini crit if you want. You could hold up your drawings to the camera, or if you're good at Zoom, you could take a picture with your cell phone and upload it into the chat and you could look at it. But really, the idea here is, again, it doesn't take any talent at all. You don't need to think about anything in particular. This is really just about the meditation of making marks. I like to lay out my palette in such a way, and I have, as you see, colored pencils all chromatically arranged. And so instinctively, I could just choose colors that I want. I always think your instinct is really smart. It just moves faster than your consciousness can ascertain. I'm also a son of a psychoanalyst, so I have a penchant for the unconscious. But if you have all your tools and materials here, and just with every circle that you want to do, just think of a new color, whatever moves you, whatever you want to, whatever color you want to go. I also had sort of the motivation, this being the Trojan night of USC Trojan colors. And so even though I didn't have the logo of USC in front of me, I was trying to think about that in my mind's eye as sort of a direction. But if you think of coils in a battery and you just sort of start from the center and move out, you'll be good. And I like to do like maybe different textures, different techniques. Sometimes when you're watercoloring, a good thing to do is if you just do clean water first, a band of clean water, and you could dip in color and it will go bloop, 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 right to the edge of where you put that, where you pre-wet the surface. If you want a little bit more control, you could just dip the color, dip the water into your palette and put that on. You could, obviously with watercolor, it is like the waterworks of plumbing, and sometimes color spills into other colors, but those are happy accidents that are sometimes really fun. If you want to isolate the color, of course, just leave a little bit of the paper in between the rings and see how it goes. If you don't like circles, if circles aren't your thing, you could do stars. I also like the idea of circles because they used to say like crazy people did circles. I thought that would be kind of fun to think about. I also like circles because, you know, we live in such a phallocentric society in the West, and a super lefty liberal gay guy with a beard. I like, you know, to not necessarily go with the idea of patriarchy. Circles are a little bit more mammalian. They're a little bit more like cycles. Things happen and they don't, kind of like life. And there is also a really nice poetry to circles, and sometimes a spirituality too, which I'm going to show you in the slideshow coming up. But I'm going to just fast forward here and show you how I was able to come up with that image, just vacillating with colored pencils, vacillating with color. Hopefully you guys are already started making your pictures. And take your time. We have at least half an hour on timing this. We'll end just in an hour. I like to go all the way out. What's interesting with this assignment with students is that everybody's circle painting is totally different. And I always think that people are a little bit like, this sounds weird, but it's funny, smelly cheese. Like you go into a cheese store and you might not like Munster, you like Roquefort, some people might like cheddar, I don't know. But each cheese has sort of a distinctive flavor. And sometimes when you have students, a lot of students, you have a lot of great sort of cheesy, in a good way, circle painting, since everything's a little different. Everything has a little bit of a different personality. Also, what's interesting, I think, my theory coming from being a son of a psychoanalyst, is we tend to have the palettes of our youth. My color palette, I'm 54, comes from really the 70s, I think, and like watching the banana splits on TV and those sort of Saturday morning cartoons. The kids these days grew up with a whole other range of media. They have a whole different kind of palette. But if you're in this sort of safe, insular space when you're making work, in the meditation of making work, and thinking about your thoughts, this is a little bit like analytical meditation. Maybe you kind of regress in a good way a little bit. You kind of go into that room-like space, sort of dream space, really. Even though it's scientifically unproven that you have a left versus right brain, I do believe in the idea of the right brain, which is more analytical, more meditative, and so on. And hopefully we're all smart, caring people, and we make work that is meaningful to us. I always say do work that you feel you want to do, not work that you feel you should do. Life is so hard, it has so many rules. I like in the age of Trump rules and bureaucracy a little bit. But with art, it really should be about freedom. And what do you feel like doing? What do you want to do? And do that instead of what you feel you should do. Want's always better than should. I think most of the great artists are always doing things they want, not what they should. So here I am, I'm going all the way out to the edge. And that took about half an hour, or half of a George Harrison LP. Do you guys have any questions sort of midway through? I want to make sure everybody's sort of on board and you're doing it. I know some people's screens are off, which is totally fine. This isn't USC school where we make people have their screens on, but is this working for you? Do you have any questions? We chose to do a seminar thing so you guys could interact if you wanted to. If not, I could regale you with a little PowerPoint slideshow of circle paintings from the past into contemporary times, and also my students' work. Maybe you'd be interested in that. So you could listen to me or not. You can look at the screen or not. But let me show you a little bit more of this PowerPoint. So this is just a good rule to follow with the color wheel. If you get stuck, if it's not moving for you, just choose the other side of the color wheel and you'll be fine. I think after this week, truly, this is a nice meditation. So really, the idea of circle paintings has been around for a long time, long before Western art history, there was Eastern art history. This isn't so ancient, but this is one of my favorite paintings of all time. Actually, this is a painting that really inspired the minimalist called The Universe by a Japanese monk, Singai Giban. And, these are the geometries that really exist in the world that make up all the different shapes. Sometimes it's good to be fast, but if you're fast, you need to be meditative and thoughtful. There is a Dalai Lama story about a guy who buys a butterfly painting or something from a monk, and he gives him his yen or whatever, and he waits a year or two, and he doesn't get the butterfly painting, doesn't come, so he goes to the monk, he says, "Oh my gosh, Mr. Monk, I gave you my yen, where's my butterfly painting?" And the monk says, "Okay, just a minute." And he thinks, and he goes, boom, 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 and he makes a butterfly painting. And the collector's like, "Wait a minute, I've been waiting years for this butterfly painting, and it just took you seconds to do it?" And then, of course, he opens up a closet door, and all these butterfly paintings come out. And he says, "Well, it took me this many paintings to do this one." And this is kind of like that. This is like a perfect painting that has a lot of volume, a lot of movement. It really is sublime when you think about it. And when you see it in person, I saw it at Guggenheim a few years ago. It's incredible. Did somebody have a comment? Okay, I'm going to continue. Obviously, mandalas have been around for a long time too. And if you're meditating or thinking about a Tonka painting or a mandala, again, maybe you're suturing into the icon of a Buddha, but you're also going into that cosmological other world that also has a lot of sort of spiritual properties to it. And of course, in the West, we also have our mandala-like geometries that have spiritual qualities. I don't know if you guys have gone to Berlin and seen this painting up close and personal, this great Fra Angelica Last Judgment. But this is an incredible painting. And of course, Fra Angelica really believed in what it was that he was painting, and kind of like the Byzantine icon painters, when he was painting an entity, he really felt that he was channeling that entity and kind of maybe putting on a face of something that's sort of ineffable. When I saw this painting up close and personal, what was intense to me was you had this wild, abstract, like God's eye behind the Christ figure that was totally intense and surreal and full of feeling. Actually, I'm not a religious person. I'm kind of a spiritual person. I'm half Jewish, half Baptist. My dad's the Jewish one. So, but I'm always sort of spiritually seeking, especially in these times. Luckily, it looks like we don't have Last Judgment coming up, but I thought this was neat that you kind of put a face on something you can't put a face on. I don't know if you read the Divine Comedy. Michelangelo loved Dante. So many artists do, including myself. But if you've read the Divine Comedy, it's all based on circle geometries. You have the 9th circle of hell, but it goes all the way to paradise. This is a great painting at the Lehman section of the Met. And I would go to this painting and really look at these circles. And again, it's sort of putting an abstraction into something that ultimately you can't put language towards. This is the Botticelli map of hell, according to the 9 circles of Dante. That's at the Vatican. I love Gustave Doré, who inspired so many people, even the art directors for King Kong. And everybody knows the 9 circles of hell, but very few people get to the paradise section. But the paradise section is so intense and really, really beautiful. And it's described so well by Dante in words, but I think visual artists like Doré really gave it a true visual sense. Circles are hard. To do circles without the aid of a compass is very difficult. In fact, the old masters love to challenge each other by doing a circle without the aid of a compass. This is why Rembrandt, I think, has these circles behind him. If you could do a perfect circle without using a compass or any kind of template, then you're pretty good. Picasso would say, if you do a circle without an aid of a compass, its imperfection is what's you about it, or your style. That's really meaningful to me. And I always tell the kids, like, look, you don't have to make things look like photos. Sometimes photorealistic work is kind of boring. But it's, if you are using photos like I do mostly in my work, how it's not like the photos, what's me about it. It's the personal thing. I always think with painting, you're consciously controlling what you want with your brush, but your unconscious is also driving the brush, and how those unconscious thoughts and feelings come through is really what gives it a life. And I love Rembrandt as I love Van Gogh. Van Gogh loved the law of circles. For him, as you guys know, he wanted to be a priest, and that didn't work out because he was, you know, a little nuts, or I don't know, maybe he's just eccentric, or he could be on the spectrum in our contemporary time. But he really got the energy of what it was that he was rendering, and he was super smart too. Everybody knows the Starry Night at Moma. This is my preferred Starry Night than the Musée d'Orsay, but I love the lights of the stars. They had such vibrancy and energy, and it really compels this. And of course, he was a spiritual person, and it's all in that work, I think. And then the wicker-like weave of Van Gogh, how in painting called this tooth and comb, how one form fits with another form. You have foreground versus background, kind of you had as a kid, and when they're all working together, it kind of reminds you of like what it was like when you were a little kid, where everything seemed alive and you weren't able to edit out one thing versus another. Your focus was on everything. And I think when we look at Van Gogh paintings or any great masterworks, the secret to the sublime is micromanaging to the macromanaged whole, and Van Gogh did that so well. But let's get into abstraction. One of the first abstract artists, and we're always rewriting history wonderfully to include women and people of color and people from non-Western traditions. We've rediscovered recently Hilma af Klint, who was Swiss. And she was really spiritual. In fact, like back in this time, it was cool to channel entities. And she was really into this and really believed that she was talking to angels, angels that told her what to paint. And in fact, angels that predicted that she'd be making images for a cathedral that would be a spiral that would go up to the sky. And in fact, she had this great retrospective, I don't know if you guys saw it, at the Guggenheim. So it came true. So who knows? But she also worked with figurative things, but also for figurative things that she couldn't quite put to words, she did abstractions. But these things really meant something to her. Every color meant something, every form meant something to her. And at the Guggenheim show, I went back again and again, and people were really staring in awe at that work. And these things really do move and vacillate. She had a show with Kandinsky. Kandinsky used to get the credit for being the first abstract artist, but maybe he got it from Hilma af Klint. We don't know. But as I mentioned, Kandinsky loves synesthesia, when one sense affects the other senses, and making music out of his forms. And he definitely dealt with color and form and arrangements to get beyond the ideas of language. Another Russian, Malevich, not necessarily a spiritual person, but on to objectify the idea of painting and forms and content. Did his famous black squares and white squares, but he also did a black circle, and these would also be installed in interesting ways. Back in France, where they were also thinking about abstraction, but not quite going there, Sonia and Robert Delaunay, the famous art couple, were really getting their game on, making some of the first abstractions in Europe, beautiful colors. Picabia is coming back. He was a Dadaist. And so these guys were kind of making fun of the Impressionists, making fun of formal fine art and so on, and wanting to bring art and ideas of language and culture into their work by either nailing a monkey to the wall or putting a bicycle on a stool with Duchamp, or Picabia trying to bring in these sort of puns and ideas of language into, in this painting, a cosmology based on this circle. Indigenous art, obviously super, super important in America. There was a whole show at MoMA back in the day of the early American modernists. A lot of people were really inspired by it, and thinking outside the box, not trying to make things in the Western discourse that feel real, but looking at other cultures for how they were able to deal with ideas of reality in a different way that got through the surface of what things look like to something that was maybe even more important. Marston Hartley was one of the first abstract painters in America. Happened to be gay. He was friends with all the great modernists. He showed at Stieglitz Gallery. He also fell in love with a German soldier when it was uncool to love Germany and definitely uncool to be gay. And so he hid his love for this German soldier by using different icons of the badges and the things from the German's uniform to make his own kind of synesthetic feeling image. This is another Stieglitz crew person, sort of outside artist named Forrest Best, who was really smart, lived in Dallas, wrote art criticism, but famously or infamously lived on a houseboat and felt that he was intersexed and did a strange operation that I won't get into that involved his genitalia and etc. But he was very spiritual, and he did these little small paintings that really had pertinence because everything had a secret meaning to him. And so kind of like the monks, while he was painting it, he was really thinking about what it meant to him. And these things really vibrate and take off, really interesting. Totally different Jasper Johns, along with Rauschenberg, again, two gay men who changed art, and they were looking at the Abex artists and they're like, why do I have to be a drunken misogynist to be an artist? Why can't I make things that relate to the outside world, kind of like Duchamp, but bring something painterly into it? And so famously, Johns did the green target. And part of the idea here, like his flag, it wasn't a picture of something, it actually was a thing. And so it's not a picture of a flag, it is a flag, or in this case, it's not a picture of a target, it is a target. And then this kind of color green that, inspired Leo Castelli to bring him on and start a whole gallery at Pop Art. He visited Rauschenberg first, and Rauschenberg said, do you want to have some ice for your drink? And Jasper lived below because they were boyfriends. So they went to Jasper's and he saw the green target. It's like, OMG, Rauschenberg, but Jasper, I'm going to show you first. But even though these are really smart works that aren't necessarily supposed to be about autobiography, there is a lot of autobiography in them in a very subtle kind of way. Soloid also coming from an idea of what I think of the beginnings of sort of postmodernity, was doing a lot of great sculpture, but he also had these great ideas for plans that anybody could do. And if you were collecting Soloid, you would get the idea for the plan and you would have art assistants or you yourself can make, based on his directions, these geometries that this is in the hallway at the Met are really kind of moving and cerebral and maybe kind of a Western postmodern idea that universe painting. Richard Long, an earthworks person, also dealing with ideas of the planet and nature and man's manipulation of nature. And for everything that can mean allegorically, here doing his circles with marble. Frank Stella also making paintings onto themselves, really forms are vacillating with and against one another. These have a real visual spin to them when you see them up close and personal, but also remind me of architecture. Speaking of the Guggenheim, Frank Lloyd Wright's designs for the logo and the even sidewalk of the Guggenheim. Fast forward into the future a little bit more, here's Basquiat's Now's the Time, his take on Charlie Parker, and obviously record albums, but its imperfection is sort of, I think, the emotive agency of this image that actually, for me, works kind of like a portrait of Parker. There's a whole show, traveling exhibition named after this painting. Felix Gonzalez Torres, not a painter, a great artist from the 80s and early 90s who died too soon of AIDS-related causes, sadly. But one of his most famous pieces is called Perfect Lovers. I love this piece, it's just two clocks, but it makes a lot of sense for the sort of mano a mano kind of idea of same-sex coupling being in sync with one another. Ross Bleckner, a person's very much alive, but was working in the time of AIDS and seeing a lot of his friends dying, thinking about ideas of chromosomes, but also spirituality, replicating domes of cathedrals and so on with his circle paintings. David Hammond's one of the greatest artists of all time, a fantastic sculptor, renderer, painter, changed art by selling snowballs on the sidewalk in the East Village. This is his basketball drawing. And so I think he's kind of making fun of Jasper Johns, and he's playing with the basketball and then bouncing it against the paper. And so this is with dust and so on, but they have the basketball underneath it to show where it came from. There's a more contemporary artist too, Beatrice Mazalas, who's from Brazil, who takes a lot from her own environment and culture and mixes it in to her abstractions. And so these things do have a life of their own within the hegemony of the picture plane, but also refer to a lot of things culturally speaking outside of it. everybody knows Yayoi Kusama for her infinity rooms, but she is a great artist, and she came to America back in the 60s. She was friends with everybody, and she started out doing these infinity net paintings that were, again, great meditations. These things are pretty big, and everybody started reworking Pollock in some way or the other. And with these things, you get up close to them, they really start to move and vacillate, but they're all made with little ribbons of white lines. You might know her infinity rooms, but they're come from that and come from her love for dots. It's kind of a Buddhist thing too. Like, she really feels like people are like dots in a universe of dots. If we're all little dots in the world on this planet, we recognize ourselves as a dot, but we also recognize the other dots that are other people. Maybe we start taking care of those people. Maybe we start taking care of our planet. Again, to me, the idea of the sublime is when you objectify yourself and you realize that you're a small part of a much bigger world. And then if you could have that epiphany when working at art, looking at art, maybe it helps you want to make the world a better place. This is neat because it kind of brings it back to the world of illustration. This was her take on the Pool of Tears from Alice Adventures in Wonderland. This is made for a children's book that was printed by Penguins Classics just recently. But that's my circle painting little lecture. Are you guys doing good with your circle paintings? Are you pretty far along? Do you want to start critiquing them? I could show you some student work really quickly and give you like a 5-minute warning.
Yeah, I need at least 5 more minutes.
Okay, so let's do that. Let me get out of this PowerPoint, and I will show you another one. So it's my great honor to be, really, I've taught a lot of places, but I love teaching at USC the most. Like, the kids are so good, really smart, really generous and wonderful, and with an ascension curve up, going to the moon, and amazing kids. This is my topics in advanced painting. To get into this class, they've had to have painting 2 and painting 1. But they could go pretty quickly up the trajectory. And I actually have some sophomores in this class, and people are sort of spreading their wings. The idea is that you can do anything that you want, as long as you love it. And we're making a body of work, but maybe you're doing different kinds of things. But if you're making this amount of work in this last, 3 months of time, then how they are made by you is what unifies them. This is June. She is really kind of an illustrator. She does kind of like very dead-on illustrations. But for this class, I allow people, however they want to argue that a painting is a painting, it could be a painting. And so she's doing digital painting. And as you can imagine, all this is done during COVID, during the politics of our time. Everybody's working in their room, at home, wherever that might be. So it's kind of amazing work. I really want to teach the meditation of making art as well as all the formal stuff. And so we talk about this in terms of the content and how the form helps to create the content. There's a Korean myth about a rabbit and a moon. And I think she was sort of identifying with a rabbit and the moon, with everything organized, while it's kind of crazy outside of that world. This is Kayla, who lives in the suburbs from LA, and thinking about her friends, thinking about being at school, thinking about LA as this other kind of dystopia in some ways, but also yearning to be there while she's still stuck at home. But also the idea of sort of travel and the idea of sort of age too, by way of these landscapes that are mysterious, a little existential because there's nobody there, but also kind of bright and alive. This is Simon, who is actually pre-med, and he has some medical issues that are happening in his family. And so he's been thinking about that stuff and using all of his pre-med acumen to make these great works. This is based on a CT scan. And I like Cézanne, when Cézanne sort of looking at Mount Saint Victoire, sort of breaks into other worlds. And he's doing that in his meditations. This is Gage, based on the famous guy who got the rod stuck through his skull but lived. But his personality totally changed. And Simon's really interested in ideas of limitations and maybe the corporal body. This was just sort of a meditation for him, thinking of this guy. But I also like how you can almost see his brain. It almost feels like you could see his interior anatomy. This is his last one, thinking about the Frankenstein monster, the original Mary Shelley, who was really smart, but felt very abject to this world and was confined to his body. But I also like in this, like the body sort of blisters out to other things too. This is Maddie, who's so cool. She also is a French major and dealing with a lot of ideas of cultural theory. This was based on just her friends and just totally made up, popping zits. It sounds kind of gross, but to me, there's like a lot of feminisms in this, thinking about her friends and ideas of relationships and not being perfect as being perfect. She doesn't like eggs that much, but she decided to paint them, thinking about her thoughts at this time in comedy versus tragedy, the intensity of the anxiety that's happening, but also sort of that relief that you could have sometimes making art. This was her poster, so she started spreading her wings. I knew her first in my comics class. It's neat that she's such a great painter, but she's also doing a lot of graphic things. So she did this poster that she distributed all through the campus. And then this was for her thesis. She decided to do a cover, portraits of the people that her thesis was about, and trying to get the psychology of these people and what they stood for, as well as their art for the person in the bottom right-hand corner. This is an architecture student, Jorge, from Spain. And he's really thinking about Renaissance architecture, but also the future, and wanting to mix abstraction with architecture in some way, shape, or form. And we talk a lot about Frank Gehry and Corbusier, and people are really thinking outside the box of what architecture could be. Here he's using an architectural platform, Grasshopper, to make this image that is really dense in detail. And it's based on floor plans that he's creating for his thesis in architecture, but being able to think outside the box, making paintings, hopefully helps to think about architecture and what those ideas of architecture are in a different way. This was a big oil painting that he actually scanned and then used the Grasshopper computer modules to get all the detail and all the color. This is Ollie Mourinho, who's just a sophomore, who was in cinema studies, which is such a great program, but he didn't like the commercial world of cinema studies so much. He wanted to do his own thing. He also had really good high school. A lot about art. And this is based on his own autobiography. So he's Latino, Cuban American, queer, and goes to the clubs and stuff, and it dances almost to this point of exaltation and really thinking about art history in that way, and media culture. And there's a lot of fragmented bodies here. Freud would say if you have a full figure in it, something, it's about the ego being retained. If you have a lot of fragmented features, it's sort of about loss of ego. I think that the students are really dealing with stuff that they're going through right now, but in such a smart way. Thinking about like all the media culture that they're involved with, really talking in an analog way about how they relate to that culture and find identities or lose their identities in that culture. This is Renzel, and she's kind of interesting because she's a great illustrator and cartoonist. Unfortunately, her dominant hand had syndrome, and so she painted all these with her non-dominant hand, which is pretty amazing when you think about it, and actually exercise that we use sometimes to loosen up with. And this was based on a drawing that she did when she was a kid, coming from her more mature young adult perspective. This is a painting, a self-portrait, as you can imagine, with her and thinking about her hand. There's a lot of zeitgeist here with ideas of sort of isolation sometimes, and sort of insular worlds, hiding in the bed, or coming out from it. I think these are really psychological and smart and really, really good. Rebecca's done a lot of work. She's going through a lot right now. And this is based on a portrait of somebody with their face taped up. This is somebody that she met in chemo when she was there, and they have a relationship, and she actually painted this while going through chemo. This is Margot, who's amazing, and we taught her sister, who is also equally great, but in a different way. This is a picture of her boyfriend, and we're thinking about myths with her a little bit, and how the personal is political, but also she's making sort of in a mythic fairy tale way. Here, her boyfriend almost looks like a giant going into a secret garden. This is a self-portrait of her in the water at a pool of a neighbor, and how she sort of feels safe in that pool. It's like this safe space that she could go to, and almost in thinking about mermaids and things like that, and fairy tales and myths, but from her own particular point of view. And to me, it's just a great synesthetic feeling. Feels like you're just diving into the pool. This is Asta, who is interesting. She's from Nigeria, and she did this in her room in India that she didn't like too much. But I think she was sort of identifying with the comforter here too. This is based on actually a breathing exercise 4-4-6. I'll go a little quicker. This is based on her mother's favorite food, shrimp curry that she makes. And so the personal is political, talking about culture through the dinner. I don't know if you guys have been following the politics of Nigeria right now and SARS, but these are based on the protests. And this is a famous activist there. Really striking painting. And this is also very iconic. You know, you can think of Delacroix, but there's blood on that flag. This is Mackenzie, and this is about her relationship to her grandmother and a bus that she had, and her grandma's ideas of what it was to be a woman in conjunction with how she feels as a young politically minded feminist. This is based on her friend Justice, who is genderqueer and really talking about ideas of presentation as well as ethnicity. And it's just a really good portrait. And it's kind of neat that this guy's name is Justice. And this is based on her friends and her memory of her friends all being together right last spring before COVID really hit, and kind of going back to that place where she could be with her friends. And this is her latest. She's going digital too, just to practice thing. It's called Growth, thinking about the past and hopefully foraging into the future. This is Nicole's work, and she's really interested in myths and folklore. This is actually a pretty representational idea of Medusa back in the time of, you know, the classics. And in that time, Medusa is really depicted the same way, with the same kind of hair and so on, was probably a person of color. And this is a first apostle for her, Mary Magdalene, who she feels doesn't get her due. And so here she's making Mary Magdalene into a star, seeing Jesus for the first time resurrected. This is based on a Cherokee myth. She's part Cherokee, and this is a picture of her mom. And the myth is about this character looking for her daughter in a forest, being led by another kid who was turned into a red cardinal. This is her latest Night. She's also a part Nordic, and it's based on a Nordic myth of a very swarthy person who is leading the chariot of nighttime. It's her own self-portrait. This is Sam. This was a gift. I always think generosity is the spirit of art. Maybe you guys can make your circle paintings into gifts that you give to people. This is a gift to her 60-year-old dad, who's represented here along with her mom and her dad's an artist. And so this is really a testament to the both of them and how they made that drawing below. This is her own self-portrait. I love therapy. I've yet to see a therapist. Really great with all these super great textures, and it really looks like her, but in the cartooniness of it, I think is about the emotion, the feeling. This is her latest, Stars and Stripes, not making fun of Midwestern Trumpian people, but maybe engaging with what that culture could be like a little bit, and also immerse in texture and giving these people their agency. Catherine's self-portrait, kind of innocence versus experience, and she's really grown. This was a gift that she did for a friend, and the cat's name was Moose, but I like that's a giant cat in Yosemite, which could have so much allegorical ideas to it. This is her own self-portrait. She likes to take portraits of herself when she cries as selfies, as to sort of postmark, to flag those moments so she could think about them diaristically, infused with an idea of a meme that she likes. And so she was trying to make herself feel a little bit better by this headdress, but I think there's some gentle irony going on here. And this is her latest, My Last Two Brain Cells. This is sort of how all the kids feel at this moment with the pandemic, with all the politics, having all their classes on Zoom, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, sort of nudging her brain. We're going to have a walkthrough of my students' great work on Sunday, November 22nd. If you follow us on Instagram, you can find more info on it. We're going to have a virtual space gallery where it's going to be designed by Jorge, the architecture students. So it's going to look really, really good. And the kids were going to take us through and talk about their own art in their own way. And this is Sister Karita Kent. I don't know if you know that she went to USC and a great printmaker. Anyway, you guys, those are my slideshows, my wonderful kids, a little bit of the circle painting action. I want to put in the chat here a link to the narrative art minor you might be interested in. It's just really new, and it's really great to interact with that world. Cinema studies, it's not so much about commercial or business or anything like that, but they really love that Roski could give some content and agency to the work that the kids are doing in cinema studies and animation, gaming, and live action. I have a lot of those students in my comics classes. But did you guys make a circle drawing? Do you want to show and reveal? Does anybody want to upload it in a chat? I realize to stay on time, we only have a couple minutes, but Oh my God, that looks so good, Marjorie. That's awesome. That's good, and it does vacillate a little bit. Oh my God, look at that one on the right. Totally different feeling. You see what I mean? Like, it's really neat. Like, it feels a little brighter. Seems like you're optimistic about the world. I think we all are. Look at the one on the top. Those are so good. Those three. Oh, excellent.
Wow.
You guys roll. These are really, really good. Awesome job. Awesome job. Really good and totally different. They all have a life. Do you see what I mean? Everybody has their own personality, their own kind of feeling. And these things really move, right? I think it's really important to realize you don't, obviously the 10,000 hour rule is real, right? The more you do this, the more you build your skill set. Oh my God, look at that one. Oh my gosh. That looks like a collaboration, Faith. But, you know, instead of watching the news to fall asleep at night, you know, sometimes it's good just to chillax, take a breather. Drugs are bad, art is good. I hope that you could take some of these ideas and just give yourself the freedom to draw, give yourself the freedom to paint. It doesn't need to look like anything. Louise Bourgeois at the end of her days was making art for the same reason when she was a little kid making her art. When she became famous, it was important to her. Oh my gosh, Christian, look at that. That really moves. Those complementary colors like really pop, but then you have that nice liminal space behind it. And Shari and friend, like, look at those are so good. Very good. I'm hoping, if anything, when I teach, that people get the meditation of doing this, you know, that it feels good. Not all art is therapy, but everybody gets something out when making work. And sometimes when you're in that right brain mode of making stuff and you have all these puzzles of your thoughts, as you solve the puzzles on your paper, on your canvas, and those things come together, you have epiphanies. It is like dreams. You know, it is like the idea of dreaming, and you're working with those same, you know, parts of your brain. It can be very edifying and very, you know, I love teaching, you know, it's really important to me, but I also love making art. And after I do my wonderful teaching and helping the kids, because to help make the world a better place, I always think art is about teaching and teaching is an art. I would like to get to my own easel. And if I didn't have painting right now, I'd be running down the street screaming and pulling out my hair. Except tomorrow it's going to be better. I'm going to be jumping up and down the street and then making a picture of a Trump with all of his Goya products or something just to get back at him. And then turning back to maybe doing a picture of Biden and Kamala. So anyway, you guys.
We hope.
Yes, do you guys have any questions?
Yeah.
One thing I like to do with the kids is not a religious thing, don't worry, but if you've ever seen the movie Spirited Away, all of them have seen it. They have this one part where the little girl steps on like a worm or something, and somebody goes like this, and you have to undo this to let out any negative energy into the ether so it doesn't bug you anymore. So I have the kids do this, and you say 1, 2, 3, kumbaya, and then you clap. Kumbaya, not a religious thing, more of a camp thing for me. But can we all do that? And then maybe that will send us on our way. So you kind of go 1, 2, 3, kumbaya, and clap. Excellent. You guys did so good. I'm really proud of you.
All right.
I hope you keep this up. It is a pretty good, inexpensive set. And Faith, your kid is so good. I love making art. You know, sometimes you have bad teachers in grade school say you aren't making the bunny the right way, and it makes people stop making art. But I don't know if you guys are artists or whatever creative field you come from, but please keep making art. Enjoy what it is that you're doing. There are no rules, and it's fun. And you could share it with others. They make great gifts. Gifts that other people live with for the rest of their life. And so the generosity is the spirit of art. So anyway, you guys, I want to stay on time with you all. Thank you guys for being with me tonight. It really is my great honor. I have family that are 3-generation Trojan. And I say to those guys, I'm going to try to make you guys proud of USC, proud of Roski. And Roski is really growing. I'm part of that whole new wave of teachers that came in and we're really kicking butt, I think. And sort of like, I went to UC Irvine for grad school, which was very gender identity politic, but I think we're sort of gender identity politic with room to breathe for transcendence and freedom and beauty and stuff like that. And we're trying to make the world a better place by teaching these kids, because they're going to go out like you all and make the world a better place. It's so important right now. Critical thinking, right? And being creative. Being an artist is about reading between the cracks. Like a Buddhist would say, I'm not sitting on a chair, it's pieces of cloth and wood. And if I stand on it, it's a ladder. When you're making really good art, you're really looking at the parts to create the whole. And there is like a kind of a thing about that. It's about critical thinking endemic to making great art. So keep making art, you guys. And please, if you have any questions, you know, I'm on the Roski website, always happy to answer them. I don't know if you have kids at Roski, but have them take our classes. It'll be fun to have them in class. And thanks for being you. Thanks for being here. Have a fun evening tonight. Hopefully there's a lot to celebrate, right? So yeah, it's a better world.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Keith.
See you later. Take care.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you on the call too if you have any questions for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Keith.
Or go to the reunion dance party. Yes, please go ahead.
So it's not done yet. I think I've got a few more circles because I got a lot of white canvas there.
Oh, okay.
But,
Let me yeah, we have the slide on for the virtual dance party, but maybe Faith, if you could take that off or something so I could see the work. So, okay, great. Yeah, that looks good.
so I was thinking maybe finishing with the inside colors of the circle as the finishing, you know, circles on the outside.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And I like to kind of go with my gut with this. And this is really moving. You're using complementary colors really well with the green and the red. And yet that green has enough space and it's lighter and brighter than the darker red. So it doesn't clash in a negative way. But I could see how that could really vacillate if you go with those Trojan colors on the exterior and just keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, but beautiful. Yeah,
Cool.
it's good.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's really painting too. You painted. Keep at it.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Nice to meet you virtually.
Nice meeting you. Okay.
Yeah. In Sherry and Holly, I don't know if you guys have questions for me or if you're just on the call to hang out. I guess on the call just to hang out. Hi guys.
You know, there's a circle photo over in the medical school, and I never understood why it would make me feel so calm. But hearing you explain some of the circle art, now I get a little more. But I used to go there during my lunch breaks and just sit there and look at it because it was very peaceful, all the colors and the circles.
That's the best compliment you could give to any artist, frankly, because, you know, we live in such a fast-paced virtual screen world that if you sit in front of art and really live with it, I think paintings open up like a flower. The more you look, the more you see. And frankly, some of my best art, my favorite art, like El Greco, where it's done for hospitals for that very reason. I'm friends with the person who's the head of the board of Cedars-Sinai, actually. And so she's getting art for the hospital. I had one of my kids, Gigi Robinson, who has a lot of medical issues, who goes to Cedars-Sinai all the time. And she did a whole photo book of her experience at Cedars-Sinai. And they're going to now show the photo book in slideshows at Cedars-Sinai. So, but
that's
yeah,
awesome.
I love looking at, obviously. Yeah, I love looking at art. I love that you do that. It is relaxing. It should be. It should be a great meditation, actually. And we need everybody in the parade. We need the floats, like we need the artists, but we also need the people clapping the floats and realizing the power of art. And that's what it should do. You know, we would save our kids and our family first if there was a fire, and then our pets. But then I would save my art because it's part of the feng shui of my world. I trade with my friends. I love the paintings of my friends. They're so important to me. And I find myself looking at those things more than my TV. So anyway, you guys, Holly, I don't know. Hi, yeah. Holly's kid.
Hi, my daughter just wanted to share her work too.
Oh my God, that's so cool. What's your name?
Sydney.
That is so good. I like your shirt too. Wait, hold it up a second. Hold up your drawing. Yeah.
Hold it.
That is so good because you have all that circle stuff that's going on in the middle, like a flower. And like a flower, you have all this stuff going on. It's like a bunch of flowers. And I don't know, it's really beautiful and meditative. You know, Picasso Matisse would say that all kids are Picasso Matisse before they get old, because then when you get older, don't let teachers tell you you're doing it wrong because you're doing it right. And if you keep this up, the 10,000 hour rule means just if you practice a lot, you could be a professional artist if you wanted to. And that's a beautiful image. It looks really good. Yeah, from the heart. I couldn't do it better. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so
Really good.
much. We had a great time.
Yeah, my great pleasure, you guys. Have fun. Yeah, anything goes. It's all good. Okay, everybody.
Thank you
So
much for sharing and doing this presentation. It was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. It's definitely something that I'm always like looking forward to, spirituality and creativity in my own time, because that's not something that I get in my job. So it's just very refreshing to hear you speak, and knowing that there's people out there like you that that are just, you know, that do take the time to slow down and are great at reminding others that it's good to take that time and to slow down. So thank you. I'm like, you've inspired me. I'm like, I want to paint more. I know when quarantine started, I went to go actually, I was with my nephews and I'm like, let's paint. And this is like the first time I've ever painted with acrylics, and I'm like dying to paint again. I like just did like the moon because I was really into astrology. But and I tried to do like a little Taurus like constellation, but I'm like,
that's
I
really
want to
good.
paint more.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, I have
What
a
was that?
friend, and now we're at the same gallery, Karma, and she goes out to her roof every night, or wherever she is. She paints the moon every night, as sort of
Oh,
a sort of diaristic record. I love the moon too. That's a beautiful painting.
Thank you.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm like, I'm like, I want to take your class now.
Well, I love teaching, and you know, this is like really neat because we get to, you know, share with the adults and remind them what's real. And so,
Yeah.
and frankly, I think we all kind of needed this exercise. We had a little bit of a small crew tonight, which was totally fine, but I have a feeling a lot of people were watching the news. So.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, we have no idea.
Yeah. Well, Trump's going to win, and my feeling, my hope is that we're going to get the Senate too. It looks like Georgia's going to turn around. Stacey Abrams is getting everybody out. There's going to be so much money to it too. Come January, hopefully we get to control everything and turn it back around. I wish it was faster. I know, fingers crossed, right? Okay, you guys. Well, I'll let you go and see what's up. Maybe they announce Pennsylvania. Who knows? But yeah, good luck. Okay, and I look forward. You know, Jean said that there's something else coming up. I'm very happy to do this. I have that PowerPoint. I have the demo. No problem. If you guys need me, I'm there for you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks too. I think it's going to be a good one. Yeah. Okay, guys. Good night.